Dzień dobry, bardzo mi miło, kłaniam się, witam serdecznie i miło mi powitać naszego gościa, właściwie gościnię, Marię Bogucką. Jest to super specjalistka, która porozmawia z nami o bardzo ciekawej rzeczy, mianowicie troszkę o tym, jak ludzi odrywać od ekranów i w jaki sposób możemy sobie radzić w sytuacji, co zwłaszcza w sytuacji pandemicznej jest super istotne. Także ponieważ mamy taką fajną prezentację, to ja się już powolutku po prostu wycofuję rakiem, żeby nie przeszkadzać. No i zapraszam do słuchania. Sam będę słuchał też z uwagą. Oddaję głos.
Good evening, everyone. I wonder how many of you I've already met at different courses in different places where we met within the English teaching program. I'm afraid the only way you can tell me any answers to my questions is actually on the chat. Last week I had a workshop with some of you and it was absolutely brilliant because we could communicate. Whereas in this one, if you feel like writing and if I follow the chat, I can comment on it. Or when I follow it, you're welcome to write and to comment any activities that I'd like to introduce. So the first question I asked you is, have we met before? Have we met before? You can write on the chat. Have we met before? Well, I guess it does take some time before you set up yourselves as well. I hope you're very, very comfortable somewhere back in your study or your living room, or perhaps in the kitchen. And again, how many of you, I wonder, are in the kitchen? Cooking at the moment, preparing dinner, and with one ear you're going to listen, with the second one you actually monitor what's going on at home. The situation is quite complex, isn't it? And exactly the same applies to our students. They're online, but probably they also do 150 things somewhere in the background, and we can't really have any say on what they do during our sessions. So basically, what I'd like we do today is just a couple of ideas, just a couple of activities that you could use if you want to tell your students, now, you don't have to stand or sit in front of the computer all the time. You can actually do things. You can actually do things in the garden, outside. All right. Okay. So one of you is making a cake, a birthday cake for your son, and well, I can actually see what you're writing, which is brilliant, which is absolutely brilliant. All right. Can we start with a short kind of a checking whether it's possible for you also to do things while taking parts in a lesson or in a session. I'm going to share my screen with you. So if there is all right, so this is the screen. All right, can you see my screen? I hope you can see my screen. The main idea or the main topic for today's presentation is language in action. And this was my absolutely biggest worry. With all the years with us, with communicative teaching, with all the communicative activities, when you ask people, stand up, move around, touch, change pairs, now work in a group of 3, and now can you get into groups of 4? Actually, it gave me nightmares. I'm going to meet my students. I've only met them twice, actually, this year, for 2 weeks only. And then you can't do anything like this. You're stuck in front of the computer. All right, you don't have to leave home. You're relatively comfortable. But how much time can you spend in front of the computers not moving at all? If you look at the, right, oh, I need to get it like this. All right, All right. This is just to prove that an activity might work with young children, older children, but if it truly works, it should work with teachers. So the beginning of our session is, can I ask you to stand up? Do you think I'm going to stand up? I'm going to stand up. Can I ask you to stand up? I know it's only the beginning of the session, so it's not, you're not very tired with sitting yet, but I would like you to stand up. I hope everybody's standing up, because we're going to follow the letters of the alphabet. But if you can see, underneath each letter of the alphabet, you've got cryptic L, R, and B. If it says L, it means that you need to touch your left elbow and your right knee. If it says R, you need to touch your right elbow and your left knee. And I wonder whether you can guess what B stands for. B stands for jump. Simply jump. So, have both legs up in the air, jump. All right? God, it's going to be really, quick. So could you please make sure that you can see the screen, because it is important that you see L, B, or R. All right? So once again, let's start. A is, once again, left elbow, right knee. And you touch it. All right? Okay. A. B. C. D. E. F. G. H. I. J. K. L. Sorry, I made a mistake. Yes. M. N. O. P. Q. R. S. T. U. V. W. X. Y. And Z or Z, whatever you choose, American or British. I wonder how many of you have done it. It is true that I can't see you. I mean, normally in a classroom situation, I'll be able to monitor what you're doing easily. And I could see whether somebody's made a mistake or not. Oh, I'm out of breath now. Are you out of breath? Well, this is the kind of activities that I thought some of them will require a lot of energy, will require some movement, a little bit of movement. And basically what you need to do is you want to activate your students so they're not just sitting in front of the computer. I wonder whether on the chat later on or right now you could tell me whether it does work with you. Have you followed my instructions? Do you think your students will do it? Any students, honestly, any age. I've done this activity with different ages and in the kind of normal classroom situation, when the classroom's alive, stationary classroom, it does work. I wonder whether it worked with you. You can write down and I can have a look at it a little bit later. If it worked with you, I bet it's going to work with your students. And there are many reasons why it's going to work with your students. Because the activity is engaging, all right? I would say it's motivating, it's meaningful, because it's your body, you moving, you touching. And the best thing is that as a teacher, you give your students an example. You engage your students in an activity and you're part of it. You're not just standing aside, you're not looking at your students, but you're participating very much. I don't know whether during your sessions, your online sessions, you can actually see the faces of the kids. Again, I would like to know whether you can have a look at what they're doing while you're having a session, whether you can look deep into their eyes. I've got quite a few sessions with my university students. Unfortunately, I can only see the avatars. Sometimes they show the face, but they say RODO actually says you don't have to show your face. And they all decided not to show their faces, but they do comment on the chat. And sometimes when I ask them to show something, they will actually, show the face and they will talk to me, as well as I can listen to them and I can see them. Activities like the one we did a moment ago, I would say is meaningful, it's motivating, and definitely it's memorable. Memorable for the teacher and memorable for the students. What really is important is that you, with every activity you do, it's not just doing an activity for the sake of an activity, but it's actually having the linguistic focus, and the linguistic focus of the one we've just had is learning the alphabet, is learning spelling. Well, let me show you once again. You could later on go through different letters, chosen letters, and they will have to show the movement. So, for example, D-O-G, they listen and they close their eyes and they can actually see what they have written, because obviously it's a dog, right? Or if you spell something like C-A-T, they will know it's a cat. But they will also have to follow the movements. So do the movements, listen to the spelling, either write down or just imagine what you have written and tell me the word. So as I've told you, it does work, honestly. Try it. Try and see whether it works with your students right now, your students online, and a little bit of a warm-up and a little bit of an activity, which is an energizing activity, actually might be helpful at the beginning or in the middle of a class. So the philosophy of that is that you prepare an activity which is meaningful, motivating, memorable, that's got a linguistic focus, but it also has got some other elements in it, namely, multi-sensory channels of perception. So you can see, you can hear, you can touch. It has an element of imagination. So the power of imagination is put in action as well. And finally, the session that you had last week, which was on flipped classroom, it's a little bit like that. So you show them activities, and later on the activity will go back to you. The main methodology of all of these activities, all of them, is engage, study, and activate. So first, the most important thing is engage students. Then you can have a moment when they say, all right, open a book on page 57. We're going to do an exercise which is devoted to this or that language focus, language material, studying vocabulary, a grammar, structure. And later on, they will have to give it back to you in the form of an exercise that they have carried out, and they show the results. All right. The next activity which I'd like you to try out is ask your students during your session to draw a cutout of their hand. And because it does take a lot of time, you say, all right, you've got the cutout. Can you actually cut it out for the next session? Can you cut out your little hand for the next session? But the beginning is there. You might prepare your own cutout. the language focus for this activity is I can. So right now you can study I can. I can jump, I can sing, I can cook, I can dance, I can play football. And it's kind of a positive. It's absolutely positive. You only write things which are true of you and which you can do. You can prepare your own cutout. I think it is important that teachers actually show their example in the first place. At this point, you could say, all right, our class is over. Can you cut out, take scissors, cut out your outline? If they are very small kids, you may say, can you ask your parents help you cut out? Well, probably they will be able to cut out anyway. Kids in the first, second grade. And then, can you write what you can do? During the next session, they will be able to show the cutouts and they'll be able to talk about it. Just a grammar exercise, but the form is, I hope, a little bit more interesting for them than just a grammar exercise. The next exercise, or the next task, which I'd like to suggest, is a scavenger hunt. At the beginning of, or actually the end of September, I had a chance to have a session with English teachers. And before the session, I sent online the list, and I said, all right, can you lots and lots of things. And for this session today, I also went out to the garden. I collected all the things I've asked you for. Oh, can I? Well, I show you. Because what we've got pebbles, we've got leaves, we've got blades of grass, and so on. As you can imagine, the language focus, which is, what am I going to show? All right, the language focus which we're going to have is, all right, the language, why is it so black? All right, okay, the language focus, we can have a chat now. The language focus for this activity is, have you got? So in a kind of stationary class, again, it would be easy because you would see whether all your students have got the things you asked them for. And just to check whether they've got or not, the questions that you can ask is, have you got a red leaf? Have I got a red leaf? I'm afraid I've got a yellow and red leaf. Can you see my leaf? You can ask, have you got a green leaf? Yes, I've got a green leaf. Yes, I have. Have you got a brown leaf? Well, actually, my brown leaf is brown and dry, but just listen to the language. It's this study bit when they repeat, revise, all the time repeat the same structure, and the structure is, have you got? Have you got any pebbles? I must say I've got lots of pebbles. I keep them in a bowl, but I also, I collect them. I love pebbles, and I use them for teaching very often. So you may ask me, have you got a grey pebble? Here you are. Yes, I have. Have you got a white pebble? Here you are. I've got. I have also brought, what else have you brought? You can ask your students. And the students will tell you, all right, the things that you've asked for. I've got blades of grass, actually quite a lot of them. So here are the blades of grass. And I've got 2 cones. They come from a pine, but doesn't really matter. I've got a cone, right, from our garden. I've got a piece of bark. So again, the question you're asking is, have you got a piece of bark? A really good question to teach, and an interesting question as well. And interestingly enough, it's quite difficult to teach it. Have you got any sand? Yes, I've got some sand, so grains of sand, and so on and so forth. Have you got a small leaf? Yes, I've got a small green. Which way should I go? I think this way. All right. A small green leaf. You can have it as a competition in which you divide students into teams, and in that team they would have to talk about things which they collected. Probably the most interesting question that you ask, have you got anything interesting? And this is the point where they actually show different things which they have collected, which they have found, and they will show you, and probably they will ask you for the language. What I have found, I don't know whether we should encourage kids to bring those, but I found mushrooms. I still found, it's quite cold outside, but there are still some mushrooms in the garden. I'm sure you can't eat them. I'm going to throw them away straight after the session, but still there are little mushrooms which I found in our garden. Is it language in action? I think it is language in action. You ask your students, I'm sorry, I'm asking questions and answering myself, but look, it's teaching, well, some vocabulary, some interesting vocabulary, things like blades of grass, a piece of bark, some sand, something black, something purple, and finally, something interesting. During a stationary class, when the school is well, a kind of communicative situation, you can divide kids into groups and they can prepare posters like this or like this, right? But if it's online, what else can you do? At the end of a session, which is devoted to have got, haven't got, or if you want to revise these structures, or if you want to talk about autumn, you could say, for the next session, I would like you to take a carrier bag, have a look at this list, take a picture of this list, copy this list, and can you bring all these items to our next session? And it is important that you show me the things you've got. Usually, when you show them a list, they normally don't ask you about any vocab, but they've got the dictionaries in their telephones. They can check, and they can even listen to the pronunciation. I think it's good if they have the full version of the dictionary where they can check the pronunciation. They bring it to class, and you practice, practice, and practice. While you send them away, all right, you might want to ask them to hug a tree. This is such a popular activity in Britain, and so just so many teachers use it for a variety of reasons. Well, the first thing you do is you ask your students to hug a tree. Have you ever hugged a tree? How many of you have hugged a tree? Hug a tree. And when you put your ear against the tree, you listen to what it tells you. Then you can ask them to take a piece of paper and take a little rubbing of the tree's bark. But you have to be really gentle, not to hurt the tree, not to be too forceful, right? Just gently, and write down what you have heard. This is what kids in the, I think there were 10, 11-year-olds. This is what they wrote. I'm afraid of people who can cut me down, and of acid rain, which can ruin my leaves, and of children who can break my delicate twigs. this is done in the classroom when kids put together what they have written. But you can ask them to write what they have heard on the chat. You can ask them to send the monologue of the tree by email. And then you can read out and comment on that. And perhaps one day when we meet in a regular, real classroom, you can put up a poster like this. 10-year-olds are capable of writing things like, I am a poor tree. I was or I used to be happy long ago. But when the carpenter was born, they chopped all my friends and people picked my little friend flowers. I am lonely. There's this unbelievable empathy that kids have got. And this activity makes you aware of how much emotion there is in a child. Well, what I noticed that very often when teachers tell me what they have heard, and I actually did quite a few times the activity with teachers, they would say, oh, don't worry, calm down, take it easy. But kids can actually hear what the tree tells them. One of the things which you ask them to do is when you have hugged the tree, when you have chosen this favorite trees of yours, can you take a picture of it? Can you take a photo? So that in class, you can show us, you can share your screen and you can show us what kind of a tree you hugged. And honestly, it's not important whether they know what the tree is called. They can again check it in a dictionary, or you can check it together. But it's not really that important. It's not really that important. The important thing is that they show you the tree and then they do the research all by themselves. When you talk about pictures or photos in action, again, you can ask them to take pictures of things they like, the house they live in, or the pet, if they have one. I guess majority of kids in the country will actually have a pet, so they can show you the picture of a cat. School, probably something around the house, right? The place where you go for a walk, the playground you like or they've used to play at. So maybe they will bring a picture of a sandpit or a swing. Sports hall in the village, probably not. But maybe they can share a picture of the family. And then you can really make it important that they ask the family whether they can share the pictures with the rest of the class. Again, what language do we practice? What is the language which you teach? I guess you teach really good presentation skills. When kids say, this is my mum, this is my cat, this is the forest I go to, this is my sandpit. First of all, they will have to check words in a dictionary. You can help them with pronunciation. They can practice very, very simple sentences, but as I've told you, it's a meaningful exercise. They will have to think twice what picture to show. They'll have to observe. They'll have to walk around, take probably 20 pictures before they show you the one which they want to, before they actually decide which one to show. Nowadays, most children have got telephones, if not all of them. Taking photos is something obvious to them. They're probably much better than most of us are. And giving them a chance to do it and later on show it in class and being able to talk about it, I would say is one of the most meaningful and most important things for them. All right. whether you know what insect it is. Because one of the tasks on the scavenger hunt list was take a picture of an insect, but be very, very gentle with it. Don't bring it to class. Don't bring it home. Just take a picture of it. I guess it is important that we do it. I mean, we show the respect for nature, and I'm not sure whether they'll be able to take a picture of any insects now because they have all gone to sleep. Am I right? Maybe an earthworm. Or still, we've got some flies at home. When it gets a bit warmer, you can actually take a picture of a fly. This time you've got a picture of that's a picture of a bee. But in order to introduce the next topic, where kids do something either together or on their own, offline, and then talk about it online, it's going to be monsters. I mentioned at the beginning of our session that it's important to engage students. Well, sometimes even to shock them. I'm not sure whether it's going to work, but I wanted to show you beginning of a film. The film is on YouTube, but this is the link to the film. And you could tell me, or you could write on the chat whether you can actually, whether you should show it to kids. As you can see, the film is only 3 minutes and 50 seconds long.
In the lowland forests of Asia, there's an insect with a frightening reputation. The biggest wasp on the planet, the giant hornet. About as big as a matchbox, and one of the most venomous insects in the world. This massive hornet can kill with its sting. A 1/4-inch long stinger injects a complex enzyme mixture that destroys tissue. This is similar to other wasps, but unique to the giant hornet is a neurotoxin that shuts down the nervous system. In a human, an allergic reaction can cause anaphylactic shock and kill. A giant hornet colony lives for only 6 months of the year, but during that time, they kill an average of 40 people. They live throughout much of Asia, from India to Japan. Like most wasps, giant hornets are intensely predatory, gorging themselves on other insects, like this praying mantis. A worker hornet chops up her prey with powerful mandibles.
All right.
But she doesn't.
All right. Okay, we only watched 1 minute of this film. Perhaps you can write on the chat later on whether you'll be able to show it to kids. Would you show it to small kids? Just for the picture. Just for the picture. Perhaps they could identify this horrible monster. Do you know what the name of the monster is in Polish? It's this gigantic wasp, the most venomous, the most dangerous wasp that you can think of. It's called hornet, which translates into Polish as szerszeń. This year we had a problem with hornets, and actually we had to, there were some hornets in the very old house, which is not far from our house. And there was actually a professional company that had to deal with getting rid of hornets in the house, because they honestly they're really frightening. But as I've told you, it is important that you engage your students. You shock them. And this is a shocking program. Even if you watch it for 3 minutes, they can make a picture of the hornet they can draw the hornet if they not if their English is not good enough to follow the program. Before you follow the program, you might ask them the questions. Where does it live? How many people does it kill? Obviously, this is for kids who are in the 7th or 8th grade, but you have to gauge it. You have to kind of find out who you can show it to. For some kids, it'll be just for pictures, because later on, the task which you'd like them to do is, can you draw a horrible monster, even more horrible than the one that you saw in the film? I bet they will remember the word hornet, and later on you can explore insects and hornets and bees. If you'd like to go back to the program, the address, the link was in the presentation, right? Okay, so the next thing which I'd like you to consider is, well, is this activity called, right? So this is the link to the program about the hornet, all right? And the next one is what a monster. The language focus, once again, because we are English teachers, it's so important that each class has got a definite and a language focus that you can easily identify. So it's vocabulary connected with animal parts, wings, legs, how many legs, right? Giant eyes, huge eyes, and a tail and a sting. It's got a sting. For all the classes, you might focus on describing appearance and describing its habits and describing why it's such a horrible insect. Why it's so bad. In a regular classroom situation, you would divide students into groups of 4 or 5, and you will either come up with fantastic creatures or horrible creatures, and students will draw instantly. At the same time, they'll draw different parts of the body. It's got an elephant, the part of the body that belongs to a different animal. But altogether, when you put all the little parts together, you'll get a monster. And then again, as you can see, the language focused, it's in red, it's a sex and genitive, it's got an elephant's trunk, it's got duck's feet, it's got, bees or hornets' sting, and somebody else's tail. And then you can think about where it comes from, what it eats, and so on. Engage students, study, and then activate. So in this way, you can activate students to use the language. In a stationary classroom, in a regular school, teachers will just display the animals the whole class have produced, and then they will read the description to the whole class. But we work online. You can divide students into teams, into rooms, or they can divide themselves, and using different social media, which they are so good at, you could say, all right, I'm going to give you 5 or 10 minutes to negotiate what monsters you're going to produce. This is what I use very often with my university students. I'd say, all right, can you now break into groups of 4 or 5? Can you discuss this problem? And when we meet again in 10 minutes or 10 minutes, you're going to present your group's decision. But this time it's going to be drawing a monster. So each of them is going to draw separate parts of the body. Then they've got to put it together, and either using computer application and they send it to you, or simply they can draw it and take a picture of it and share the picture with everybody else. Monster presentations will be the focus of the next session. Is it language in action? I guess it is. I guess it takes the attention off the screen, at least for a moment. This is what students prepared in a regular classroom, but I bet using the social media and using the available media that they have, especially in older classes, class 6, 7, 8, I guess they would be able to produce something like this. The language focus, as you can see, is Saxon genitive, is very, very simple structures, but putting it together. It lives, it eats, it listens to reggae music, or its favorite music is punk rock, and at weekends it goes to Russia, where its parents live. You've got it black and white, so if you can spot any mistakes, you might comment on them. But the most important thing is the message, is what they write. All right. There is a series of activities which I'd love to suggest, which are connected this time with CLIL, so content and language integrated learning, and something which I wholeheartedly recommend, but it means it takes some preparation on part of the teacher. The first one I'd like to advertise is weighing online. The good news about online teaching is that if you work in a regular, non-pandemia type of context, then I'm afraid you have to pack a huge bag with things and carry them to school. Probably you're used to that. And sometimes you wish you had a van to take all the stuff you need for teaching. You are at home. So you might as well, just use the things you've got in the kitchen, you've got at home. You don't have to carry anything. You just prepare it and you show it in front of a screen on your camera. The reason why you want to show it, again, this is the really important thing, is that the teacher is the person who begins. You need to experience exactly the same thing as your teachers will, as your students will. All right. So, what do you need for the presentation? All right. I don't know whether we can make my picture a little bit bigger. Can we? I hope so. All right. So what you need for that is obviously kitchen scales. All right. So you've got kitchen scales to measure things, to weigh things. And another thing, that you need cups or jars full of various things. Again, in a class which is not online, you would open each jar and you will ask students, preferably blindfolded students, to touch what it is. All right. But this time I need to tell you, oh gosh, all right. So this one is flour. I also have sand, and I also have, for example, beans. And finally, the standard thing is you need sugar and salt. I know they're the same color, so online you can see it, but you can bring even bags full of salt or sugar, and the task students will have is, all right, I've shown you all of that. Can you write down the products which I have shown, or you can spell it to them. And the next step is, can you put the products which I showed you from the lightest to the heaviest? The focus, the language you're going to practice is heavy, heavier, the heaviest. Light, lighter, the lightest. The important thing is that each jar is of the same size, and the jar is exactly the same amount of the product, so it's filled up to the brim. And then you could say, all right, for the next class, I would ask you to ask your mum whether you can use the kitchen scales, and I would like you to find out which is the heaviest, which is the lightest, which is heavier than, which is lighter than. In class, you will just make a prediction. So what do you think? When you look at flour, sugar, and salt, which of the three is going to be the heaviest? I bet all of you have got kitchen scales at home, so you can always check it. If you focus, or when you focus on the language, it really is important language, isn't it? It is important language. And well, if you teach them how to grade, okay, so it's how to grade adjectives, you might as well produce something like this. So at home, as part of the homework, they will be doing things, and when you meet next time, they will tell you which product, which is the lightest, which is the heaviest, which is heavier than. Is salt heavier than sugar? You might even want to ask them, why is it heavier or lighter? So basically, the class is for setting up an activity, introducing the language, and leaving the kids with a task. And instead of asking them to do an exercise in an exercise book or sit in front of the computer all the time, you'll tell them, you'll ask them, go to the kitchen, experiment with various things, and write sentences. And when you meet next time, they have to actually show you how they did it and what the conclusions are. Also, you could also ask students to predict the weight of things they would like to weigh. For example, you've got a cone. Oh, okay, all right, okay. Okay, you've got a cone. How much do you think this cone weighs? How much does it weigh? It's difficult language. Honestly, the language is quite difficult. So you take, can you predict how much does it weigh? How much does it weigh? And then in front of the camera, you would, first of all, kids will write down how much it weighs, all right? So imagine that you're writing down how much it weighs, and then you put it on the scale. God, you need to have, oh, it's only 25 grams, actually. No, it's not grams, yeah? Yes, very, very, very little, right? Is it 25 grams? Yeah, okay, so it weighs only 25 grams. The person who was the closest to guessing how much it weighs is kind of a winner. And they can write on the chat their predictions. You can write on you can read, and you can announce the winner. And the winner is the person who predicted most closely how much a cone weighs. In exactly the same way, you can ask them to measure things. Again, you focus first on the task, on introducing the task. And for this, you need, I've lost my measuring tape. Got it. All right. I've got a measuring tape like this. You need a measuring tape. All right, this is a measuring tape. And you can measure, all right, how long my computer is, all right. My computer is only, is 32 centimeters long. Yeah, so the box is, the length is 32 centimeters. So it's a kind of a medium-sized laptop, and the width, and good vocabulary, horrible to pronounce, mind you, 23 centimeters. So the length is, the width is, oh, the heights. If you put the screen down, you might also measure the height of your laptop or of your desk. Or they can actually decide on what they want to measure. Once they decide on what they want to measure, they can measure their hand span, or the length of the step, or the hair, or the whatever they want to. How long the cat's tail is. I'm not sure whether the cat's going to be very happy about it, but why not? You can measure the cat's tail or the dog's tail, and let's see what results you're going to achieve. So once they have done this, it's not just a task from a book. You will ask them to study something. All right. Okay. All right. And you've got, again, you can have a look at my screen. So you're talking about heavier, the heaviest, when you weigh things. You're talking here about longer, the longest. You're talking about the length and the width. How wide is it? As you can see, the language is quite demanding, but I bet kids will learn it. Will definitely learn it because it's meaningful. Because it's language in action. And they will always remember things which are done in action better than the things you studied just from a book. The more tasks like this you have, the more engaged students are. But it is absolutely true that before you engage your students, I'm afraid, as always, you have to engage yourself in an activity like this. And you have to show how fascinating it is, because it's discovering knowledge rather than just reading it from a book and doing exercises which have been prepared for you, written by somebody else. You may want to, they may want to ask you about different words. They may want to ask you about vocabulary, which is strange, but perhaps they need it. But perhaps this is the vocab which is something that they need in order to get better grasp of English and remember it better. Okay, why are we doing this? The main reason why we're doing this is because we want to empower our students, because we want to be students who, or teachers. I'm sorry, I'm getting lost with the presentation a little bit. Should go the other way around, right? I need to go to, okay. I think during one of the sessions that we had in Jabłonki, we talked about empowering teachers and teachers who will motivate students more than teachers who actually care very much for the students, whether the students will learn English, not just preparing them for the test, because I believe that some of the material here is not just for the test. Most of it, mind you, is. Structures like have got are present simple to describe customs. What does it look like? So the physical appearance, it's test material. It is test material. But you will also get activities which will go beyond the core curriculum, but actually it should be the core of our core curriculum, mainly teaching how to think critically and how to think creatively. Empowering teachers, according to what educationalists say, are teachers who are ready and able to face new challenges. And the times we're living in now is, well, it's basically challenging, isn't it? Every class is a challenge. How are you going to respond to classes during pandemic, right? How are we going to respond to that during the times of a pandemic? They're autonomous. They can independently think and let kids do things which are interesting and not only things from the book. Innovative, creative, ready to share the knowledge, and aware that students should be given tools of how to study. For example, check it up in the dictionary. You want this word, check it up. I can help you with the pronunciation. In order to be empowering teachers, we need to adopt a very much student-centered approach. Like the flipped classroom. Do things at home, bring them to class. And very often kids will definitely surprise us. They will surprise us so much with the things that they bring. When you say bring something interesting, it truly is interesting what they're going to bring. You support students' holistic approach because they touch, they move around, they observe, and not just sit in front of the computer. You offer them a freedom of choice. Measure what you want. Tell us what you have measured and what was so surprising about it. Perhaps you didn't expect the cat's tail to be so long. Whose tail is longer, the cat's tail or the dog's tail? Freedom of choice. And in this way, you will empower your students to do outrageous things. After almost a year, not a year yet, but we're kind of approaching a year of online teaching. My first kind of idea that came into my mind after some time of online teaching is that this is me, all right, you're going to imagine, this is me, that I'm a tightrope walker, that online teaching is very much like walking on the tightrope. And you can only survive online sessions if there is cooperation between you and your students. For the balance on the tightrope, you do need the cooperation from your students. So if you want a line to be really safe, and if you want to walk through your online sessions, you need your students to cooperate. And if you only ask them to do things from your book, then I'm afraid, all right, they'll definitely do it because this is the task. But I guess if you go beyond it, and if you ask them to choose what you want to do within the language which is taught, so you engage them, they study, they use the language which they need to revise, but at the same time, you activate them, and they are active not only in front of the computer. Oh, I wish I could interact with you so that I could actually listen to you, to your reactions, to what you say, whether you've experienced any of these activities, and whether you think they're going to work with your students at school. All of these activities do work with my students. I wouldn't dare show anything that doesn't work with my students. I've experienced all of them, and I wholeheartedly recommend these activities to you. I guess this is the end of our session. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very, very much. Have a good holiday tomorrow. And stay alert, be careful, and hopefully, you'll join me for yet another session, which I'm going to have sometime in December. And well, good night. Thank you very, very much. Hope to see you in real life as well, not just on the screen. Goodbye. Thank you. All right, are we going to contact with stay in touch or anything? Leave studio?